viewers, you are welcome to the exclusive where the spotlight shines brightly on the lives, passions, and pursuits of our esteemed guests. In this insightful conversation, we delve beyond the surface to uncover the untold stories, unspoken thoughts, and unseen moments that shape the lives of our exclusive guests. From the corridors of power to the realms of creativity, our guests come from diverse backgrounds, each with their unique experiences, perspectives, and achievements. Now, through probing questions and thoughtful discussions, we invite our guests to share their innermost thoughts, their desires, and inspirations, offering our audience a rare glimpse into the lives of these extraordinary individuals. So, once again, thank you, viewers, for joining us on another episode of The Exclusive. Coming to you from ACNNTV right here in the Federal Capital City. I am Promise Njoku Adibe, your anchor for this episode. And today, we shall be talking extensively, very extensively, with one of Anglican Communion's finest. He is a priest, a father, a researcher, and a friend who was recently appointed as the first Commonwealth theologian in residence, Westminster Abbey, for the Lent term 2025. And he is also the canon theologian Anglican Diocese of Kwei. So join me as I welcome the Reverend Dr. Ishaya Anthony. Good to have you come talk to us, sir.
Thank you very much, Promise, for having me in your studio. And greetings to our viewers at home.
Now, I'm sure our viewers are so going to be glued to their screen to watch you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, your wealth of knowledge is what we want to, tap a little out of. Okay, so viewers, remember to follow, like, and share this program on our various social media platforms. Now, let's the conversation begin. So, I just want to ask, let's talk about your life as an individual, as a priest, a father, an academician. Let's just talk about your life, how the journey has been so far.
Thank you very much for that wonderful question. You just reminded me of the multiplicity of an individual's life. Talking about me as an individual, a father, a priest, and the many other layers that come in between. So like you have said, my name is Anthony Ishaya. I am a barrack boy. I grew up in the barrack. My father was a retired soldier. He retired with the rank of staff sergeant. Yes, and my mom, used to be what you call a petty trader, someone who sell on the streets, like fry kosi and things like that for people to buy. Yeah, so that's my family, background. But the beautiful thing about my family is that my father used to be a Sunday school teacher even while he was in the barracks. So one of the things he tried to do is to instill that God-fearing attitude, to us as his children. So imagine you having a father that is born again and is a soldier. So you combine discipline. Yeah. So that's the kind of family background that I come from, and I went to Army Children's School in Rukuba Barracks, just in Plateau State. I went to Government Secondary School, Kubacha in Kagarko Local Government, Kaduna South, and I also study animal health and production at the Veterinary Research Institute in Vom in Jos. And then I did my first degree in terms of Bachelor's of Divinity at the prestigious Theological College of Northern Nigeria. Yes, I was there from 2004 to 2008. Very importantly, while I was there, I was the sport director.
Oh my goodness!
I play football.
So would have been seen another Osimhen. Beautiful.
Yeah. So and then from there, I was called into Kubwa Diocese by the late Bishop Simon Bala. He brought me because then they wanted to start a farm for the diocese somewhere around Kuje area. So because of my experience in animal health and production, I came to the diocese in 2008. But along the line, Baba became sick and then he died. And Baba Duke came on board and he ordained me. From there, I served in few churches within Kubwa Diocese. I was in Kuje Area Council in Pegni, St. Michael's. From there, I was moved to St. Peter's Church in Kurudu. From St. Peter's Church in Kurudu, I was moved to St. Mark's in Galadima in Abuja Model City. From there, I went for my further studies at Stellenbosch University in South Africa. I am married now for almost about 13 years, getting to 13 years, and I have two beautiful daughters. The first one is 11 turning 12, and then the second one is 8. They are doing very well. They wish to come with me, but they are in school.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I think that's just a little that I want to share about myself for now. And maybe as we progress, there might be a few questions here and there that might bring me back to reflect on other things.
Okay, that's beautiful. You have a wonderful, I love the summary and the exodus of moving from here to here. That's a very good one. Yeah. Okay. Now let's look at it. Recently, you were appointed as the Commonwealth theologian in residence for the Lent term 2025.
That's correct.
So can you share your feelings, about this position, and how do you plan to navigate this task effortlessly?
Well, first and foremost, let me say thanks to so many people, via social media who facilitate they wish me a lot of good luck, in going for that program. So I want to say thank you to everyone in connection to that. Yes, I was appointed, the Commonwealth theologian in residence, like you said, beginning from this January to March. My responsibility there will be to complete a monograph that I'm writing. So I'm writing a book, which I believe is going to be, something about muted prophets, how prophets are muted within the context of social political fear. So I'm reflecting on that, but using Nigeria as a case study, the prophetic ministry in Nigeria as a case study. So while I'm in the UK, I will be reflecting on that and completing that particular project. And then I will also be looking at colonialism and Anglicanism, when how Anglicanism and colonialism, especially in Nigeria, how they work, the connection between the two, so I will be visiting different institutional archive to see firsthand data or documentation on how the missionaries, the CMS missionaries, interact with us in Nigeria, and, how Anglicanism developed in Nigeria and things like that. So it's going to form part of what I will be doing in the UK by the grace of God. And I will also be given the privilege once in a while, to reflect on maybe different programs that the Commonwealth is doing from a theological perspective, and then, being in the Westminster Abbey once in a while, if given the opportunity, maybe to preach and lead services, and maybe just learn also from the community, and also bring whatever I am coming with in terms of my training here in the Church of Nigeria also to that particular space. So I'm very excited, and I'm looking forward to that challenging, joyful experience, because it's not just going to be an easy experience, and especially being the first one, others will come before you, so you are like the guinea pig, and you need to be able to, put some things. So I'm open to the different opportunities that particular responsibility will bring me.
Well, you got it right. Challenging, but interesting.
That's
because
right.
From everything you just narrated, I'm trying to imagine how challenging it really would be. But then, are there specific changes you intend to make in the course of your stay in this current position?
Well, I'm not very sure, because I have not been there yet. There are people who sat down together and put that particular office together. So my responsibility will be to work with them. I learn from them and they learn from me. So in terms of saying you go, you change this, you change that, I'm not sure that will be part of what I will be doing, but in terms of learning, I know that I will be learning from them in one way or the other, and they will also be learning from me. And then during the course of the learning and the friendship, whatever that needs to be changed, if there's a need for that, we see how things will unfold.
Okay.
Yes.
That's really awesome. I think
Yes.
we're going to really keep a tab on you and follow up your story. We really
All
do that.
Yeah.
Well, now let's talk about research, because you seem like someone who has so much love and passion for that. Recently you explored the socio-political economy of religious media in Nigeria, of which ACNNTV was a case study for you. I just want to know, I have some questions I want to ask. First, what motivated you to explore the relationship between media and the Anglican Church, specifically using ACNN, as a case study? What brought about that?
It's interesting that you're asking that question because, you are putting me in a position where I'm reflecting on how did I find myself here. But I think there are individuals who need to be mentioned. There are individuals who play very critical role in getting me to where I am today, and especially in doing the research I did on the ACNN as part of my PhD study. The first person that I want to mention is my mom. She said to us one day that I didn't go to school, but I'm willing to sell my last cloth for any of you who want to study to any level. So that for me was a great motivation, to pursue academic, but also pursue academic excellence. So she is a very great motivation. Both my father, they are very great motivation for that. But when it comes to my research, I first got exposed to research when I was in TCNN, the Theological College of Northern Nigeria, and precisely by three very important people in my life. So the first one is Professor Tesu Aben. Aben was a very great church thinker. He thinks very critically. He's a philosopher. He said to me, Ishaya, I think you belong in the academia. Yes, you will do well as a pastor, but also a pastor that is critical, in the way you think and the way you do things. So Aben was very instrumental to that. And he has followed my growth. He has followed me. He came to South Africa. He has been very consistent in checking out what is happening in my life. And by the way, he's NKST. He's not an Anglican. He's
Oh,
NKST.
not even an Anglican.
Yes, he's NKST. But I think that is the beauty of education. The beauty of education is that it goes beyond your denominational or cultural or whatever affiliation. It's education that says a leveling ground.
Yeah.
So Aben was very, very critical in my growth. And then there is another guy called Reverend Solomon Umazi. Now, Umazi is a Presbyterian priest. He's a professor in one of the universities in Canada now. He was very particular. He taught me homiletics and liturgy. And he said to me, Ishaya, I think you will do well to be a scholar of preaching. So he guided me. That my master's degree was on preaching. I studied homiletics and liturgy pure for my master's degree in Stellenbosch University in South Africa. Now, and then I now have another guy called Reverend Dr. Philip Asura. So Umazi is Presbyterian and Asura is EYN. Now, Asura was my supervisor for my first thesis. The first piece of work I have ever written in my life was guided by Reverend Dr. Philip Asura. And he was very, very intentional in saying to me, Ishaya, you have to look. Then I reflected on the death penalty, looking at it from a biblical perspective and within the legal framework in Nigeria. So he guided me very well on that. But coming to my love for the Anglican Church, to look at the things that the Church of Nigeria is doing, to be specific, that interest was encouraged by the Bishop of Kubwa Diocese, Duke Akamisoko.
Okay.
Yes, when Duke Akamisoko came to Kubwa Diocese, among the many beautiful things he was doing at that time when I was there, he makes sure that every person, whether you are an evangelist, you are an ordinand, you are a priest, you must have a book to read.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Compulsory.
Yes, it was. And you don't only read the book, you read and you write. You give a report of what that book is about.
Wow.
Yes, so Bishop Duke Kamisoko was doing that. Now, at that time, I was very faithful. I would write, I would read, I would submit, I would read, I would write. But I got to a point and I asked myself, am I reading, writing, and submitting because it was an assignment from the bishop, or what is this benefiting my life? And there I now discover that this is really benefiting me. So I picked interest. Sometimes I go to Wuse Under Bridge, I look for books, I buy, I go back home, I take time to study. It will interest you to know that when I came to Kubo Diocese, my first posting was in Pegni in Kuje Area Council. The only thing I went, apart from my cassock and my clerical shirt, then I was not ordained, were cartons of books. A carton of books. There was no pot, there was no place to sleep, nothing. Those were the only thing I had at that point.
Those were priority for you.
It will interest you to know also that it was when I got married to my wife that we bought a mattress.
So where have you been sleeping?
The church made provision that we, things like that. But that was not really like a deep priority. So Duke Kamisoko, I think he played a critical role. I remember one of his work that he gave us was on Ajayi Crowther, and I began, when I was reading that work, I was asking myself, oh, look at what Bishop Ajayi Crowther had to go through for us to be where we are today. And since then, I began to pay very close attention to what the Church of Nigeria is doing and how can we write, academically what the Church of Nigeria is doing. Bishop Kwashit said something very interesting before when they were thinking about the formation of the ACNN. He said, the ACNN is important because it will enable us to tell our story in our own way.
Very true. Very true. I agree.
So for me, that was very, very instructive. I don't need to be hearing every time about what the Church of Nigeria is doing from someone out there that is not in the church. He or she might not give a very nuanced and good perspective. So that was how my journey began. So these people play very, very, very critical role. And then moving out of Nigeria to South Africa, I also met great mentors, people who held my hands, and say, there is something, you can do it. I remember I have a very wonderful professor, Dion Foster. He's currently in the Netherlands now. That one was very, very good to me. He held my hands. He introduced me to public theology. He held my hands and we've published together with him, and wonderful person. But there is a woman that I would need to mention. Her name is Professor Lee.
Okay.
Professor Lee, she guided me in my PhD thesis. She and one Professor Chris in Ghent University in Belgium. Lee is a Muslim.
Wow.
Yes, she's a Muslim. So my PhD thesis that I wrote on the ACNN was guided by a Muslim.
By a Muslim,
yes.
Wow. Actually, God can use anyone. God can use
So she was very, very, very intentional, in allowing me to think, within my context and outside my context. So these are few persons who have played very significant role. There are a lot and a lot and a lot of them that I can mention, but let me just stop here for now. Yes.
Yeah, that's really, really very, it's quite interesting, especially, all those people you mentioned, truly they played from everything you've just said now, they're really worth mentioning. Yeah. But then we look at the research, design, and methodology. Like, how did you collect and analyze your data? What, can you elaborate more on that?
Okay, so I think it's important to maybe just take it back a little bit.
Okay.
So my research was on public pedagogy and the social political economy of religious media in Nigeria. And I focus on the ACNN. So the concept of public pedagogy, for those who are in education, is just to say it's about teaching and learning. So it's an argument that teaching and learning can take place outside the school environment. So the media becomes a space where teaching and learning take place. So that is where the concept of public pedagogy comes to play. And I look at it from 3 dimensions. The first one is what I call a pedagogy for the public, and a pedagogy of the public, and the pedagogy that ignite publicness. So that one is another long class of its own. But so I try to look at the ACNN, how is the ACNN responding to the social political happening in Nigeria? So if you flip it the other way, it will be, how is the social political happenings in Nigeria influencing the ACNN, and how is the ACNN responding to the social political happenings in Nigeria? So in my research, and can their response be considered as a form of literacy development? Because the whole idea is you inform, you shape, you reshape, you keep informing and things like that. So can what you do be classified as a form of literacy contribution or development in Nigeria? And if yes, what kind of literacy can we identify from that? So that was what my PhD work was about. And it was hosted by 2 universities. So the first university was Ghent University in Belgium. They gave me a PhD in educational science. And then I have University of the Western Cape in South Africa, gave me a PhD in theological studies, because my work is both in education and also in theology. So that was what my PhD work was about. Now, talking about the research design, what kind of research design did I use? So I use what is called more an empirical research design, an empirical research design that has different techniques and components to it. So what happens is that I go to the field, I come to the field, which is ACNN, and I was graciously received, first by the GS. The GS, Dr. Paul Dajum, he graciously received me, gave me unrestricted access to the archive of the church, where I need to look at how have we been engaging with the media right from the 18th century when the CMS came to Nigeria. Because you can't talk about, to appreciate ACNN and to appreciate the media work of the Church of Nigeria, you have to put it in its historical context.
True.
So I had to go into the archive of the church. So I use archival materials. And then I also had to look at interviewing few persons in the church. So my data was designed in such a way that my participant, I had few, key gatekeepers and players in the Church of Nigeria. So for instance, I was privileged to interview Baba Primate Oko. Yes, he was very, very thankful, and I was very thankful that he gave me that opportunity to do such kind of research, and things like that. So I interviewed him. Part of the reason I interviewed him was because, one, he was the head of our church at that time. And number 2, the station was established during his tenure, and he was, number 3, he was coming close to the end of his ministry. So how do we hear from him how we started, how the station was, get to the point, and what is his plan, as he hand over, what will be his words to the incoming primate. So I had the opportunity to interview him. And then I had the opportunity to also interview Baba Asaju, the bishop theologian of our church, great father, great scholar of the church, and part of the reason I interviewed him was because I wanted to have a kind of theological backing. The difference between a religious media outlet, and a government media outlet is that you must have a biblical, if it's a Christian station, what is the biblical and theological foundation of your station? So I needed to hear from Bishop Asaju, and things like that. So I interviewed him, and then I picked a program. I picked 2 programs of the ACNN to analyze. one of the great program, Christian in Politics.
Oh,
And then,
beautiful.
and it was in 2019 when Nigeria was going into an election, general election and things like that. So I picked Christian in Politics, and then I picked the 2019 Bible study outline of the church. Because, and so then I had the opportunity to interview the presenters of Christian in Politics, wonderful colleague and friend, Smart, and then I also had the opportunity of interviewing a wonderful brother, Ejikam, something like that. Ejikam, he was doing the Bible study.
Ejikam.
He was doing the Bible study. Yes. So I looked at the Bible study critically, and then I also interact with the people who are presenting it. And then I had I interviewed the general manager, I interviewed Phoebe, then she was the program director or something like that. Yes, so I interviewed her. I interviewed Emmanuel Akinola, who was doing a program called I can't remember now. He bring two people to the studio and they argue for and against something and things like that. Crossfire. Yes. So I had the opportunity of interviewing these people. And the Christian in Politics program, it will interest you to know that I looked at Christian in Politics every single episode in 2019. Every single episode that you broadcasted in 2019. Wow. I got it, downloaded it, they gave me everything. I listened to it, I transcribed it, and I did a thematic analysis, discourse analysis, but I had to do a thematic analysis that led me to be able to discuss this thing. So I put things in themes, in different themes. I use different social science software, that help in research. I use that. And so these were the methodology that I use, in arriving to where I got to. Yes.
Wow. I just have to give you a clap. That was really a tedious job, and you did it, and you're laughing.
I think that's what gave me gray hair.
No, I think the gray hair is part of wisdom. It's been said that gray hair is wisdom. I think the gray hair is part of wisdom. But then on a lighter note, you mentioned I have PhD this, I got PhD. Please, how many PhDs do you have?
So the PhD is a joint PhD.
Okay.
So universities now across the globe are trying to find a way in which they can enrich themselves with knowledge from different parts of the world. So there is a lot of collaboration between universities. So for instance, how can you as a theologian do an interdisciplinary study that can connect you to another discipline, but while you're still a theologian? So in my case, a theologian looking at educational issues, so that's how it is. So at the end of the work, you are awarded, you do a very tedious defense from both university. I had a time where I spent some months in Belgium as part of the research to be deeply immersed in educational sciences. I attend classes, I went to seminars and things like that. And then there are also times where I had to spend a lot of time in South Africa doing theological studies, deeply immerse myself in theological studies. So at the end of the work, both universities sit, and then they agreed that the University of Ghent agreed that this young man qualifies to receive a Doctor of Philosophy in Educational Sciences. And they awarded me that degree.
Okay.
And then I came back to South Africa. After my defense, they also agreed that this young man is qualified to receive a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Theological Studies. And then they offer me that degree. So I have two certificates.
That's really awesome. It's not easy to come by. But let me ask, didn't you at any point feel overwhelmed? Didn't you feel like, just dropping out? You've gone so far and you got stuck at the middle. Didn't you at any point in time had such feelings?
I mean, it's a normal thing for everybody who is doing a work like that. I had different seasons, and especially, I started in 2019 and then COVID hit, and at that point it was a little bit challenging, but there were different things that kept me going at that time. So number one is my family, my immediate family, my wife and my daughters, they look up to me a lot. My daughter, they ask questions about what I do and like tell us in simple terms, what are you doing? So when you had that kind of conversation with them, it's refreshing.
True.
You find the need to continue. And one other thing also that helped me a lot was I like to dance and I also like to cook. So when you get very frustrated, when you are chopping the onions, this thing is that you are crying.
It's not really easy to get burnt out. You burn out really. So you dance, you cook,
yes,
you play
I do.
football. You still play football?
Yes, I do once in a while. Yes, I do. Yes,
that's
I do.
super.
I
That's
do
really
once in a while.
awesome.
Yeah, so those things and prayer, very importantly. I cannot sit here and claim that these things that I do are the only things that sustain me. God, in God's mercy, sustain me when I want to give up, even in the midst of all that I know to do. I still see that when I look back, sometimes I ask myself, how did you get to this point? So I will never take credit, for even with all that I've mentioned. And I will tell you that God is a faithful God.
He is.
Yeah, he's a faithful God.
He is. He is always faithful. And this is you're really motivating me. And I'm thinking of going to further. I need to go PhD. I need to go for it. Okay, but now let's look at from how does ACNN represent the Anglican Church and its values? You talked a whole lot about ACNN. In your own opinion, how does ACNN represent Anglican Church and its values? And what implication, does this have for the church's public image out there?
So you see, the ACNN is a very, very, let me use the word of the former primate Oko. It's a very, very strategic partner in the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Agreed.
He said that the church need the ACNN more than the ACNN need the church.
True. Very true.
So when you look at the time we live in, it's a mediatized, time. And so every church, in one way or the other, every denomination have a presence in the media. So when you look at the ACNN today, the ACNN is contributing greatly, not only in changing the face, of how we do things, but the ACNN is also contributing greatly as a public memory.
Okay.
Yes, as a public memory. So when I use the word public memory for the ACNN, is that when you care to know anything about the Church of Nigeria, any serious thing about the Church of Nigeria from 2013, any serious thing you want to know about the Church of Nigeria, in one way or the other, you will get it from the ACNN.
Oh, I feel so elated. I feel like working on on the air because I work with ACNN. And I feel so proud. It's so good hearing this coming from you.
But it's interesting for you to also know that it takes a lot of hard work.
Yes, it does. It does. I agree. Nothing good comes easy.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So the station serve as a form of public memory.
True.
Today in our church, there are a lot of things that we might not have on paper, but the ACNN has a way of keeping those things for us. The next generation will come and they will have something to reflect on.
Very true.
So for me, number one, the station is serving as a form of a public memory. And then number two, the station is also helping in showing us that religious media outlets, yes, your primary focus is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ for the ACNN undiluted word of God.
Oh, yes. Yes.
In addition to that, it is important to recognize that there is a political and a social dimension to the ACNN. And if you look at it from 2019 election, you will really understand and appreciate what I'm saying. If you look at how the ACNN was very intentional in making sure that Nigerians, Anglicans, are fully informed about before you vote, during the voting, and after the voting. And even how some political aspirants were brought into the studio to have interaction with. And I think for me, I deeply appreciate that part of ACNN. And part of the reason I appreciate that part of the ACNN is that there are a lot of changes we want to see in Nigeria. And the truth of the matter, the people who are in the aim of affairs to change things, some of them will not sit in our churches on a Sunday.
True. Very true.
But when you say some certain things here, they hear it.
Exactly. Exactly. You're very correct.
So it is, I find that dimension of the ACNN very, very interesting. And you go a little bit further again, you discover that during different crises in Nigeria, for instance, like some of the crises that happen in Southern Kaduna and other things, places like that, the ACNN was very intentional in not just speaking theoretically, but making sure that people who are there have a voice.
Yeah.
I think for me, that is very, very important as we do media within the context of Nigeria. And very importantly also, I see what the ACNN is doing for me. It carries a very important aspect in trying to be grounded in our Anglican identity.
Yeah.
And when I use the word Anglican identity because of Anglican ecclesiology, it can carry a different interpretation in different contexts. But within the context of Nigeria, when we speak about Anglican identity, we are talking about an identity that is deeply rooted in scriptures. An identity that is also, daily try to see from scriptures and respect humanity. So when you look at what the ACNN is doing, the ACNN was not, during that 2019, it was not only an advocacy for Christians, and it's for Nigerians. We want this country to move forward. We want this country to work. And I think for me, that's very, very unique. Because when people hear about religious media outlets, one of the first things you want to hear, they are preaching Bible. But Bible is very, very central to what we do. And that was why I said to you in my methodology, I had to interview the bishop theologian because I need to get a biblical foundation and a theological foundation for what we do here at the ACNN.
I'm sure every staff of ACNN is really feeling very, very excited and, proud to be a part of, what you just described. And I'm very sure we're going to all sit down and watch and rewatch and share this particular program, The Exclusive. Thank you very much. That's really so heartwarming coming to you, from you to all of us here at ACNN. Now let's move forward. Looking at the Anglican Communion as an Orthodox church, how do you think Anglican Communion can maximize the media and still maintain her traditional doctrine?
Okay, I think to answer your question, we need to understand the different concept of how religious media are established and for what they are established and how they are being used. So, but for the sake of this interview, I'm going to just speak about two very important points to answer your question.
Okay.
So the first thing that I want to mention is the Anglican Church using media. That's one point. And then the second point is media portraying the Anglican Church. So they look the same, but they are two different
things. Okay, I'm sure you're going to elaborate on that.
So the first part is within the control of the church.
Okay.
So for instance, like the ACNN now, the ACNN, among the many reasons it was established as part of the Anglican Church, especially the province of Nigeria, using that to propagate the gospel of Jesus Christ. So in other words, here you see that the church is using the media. And then the other side of it is how the media is used to portray the church. So what are the difference? The first one is within the control of the church.
Yes.
So wherever the church can come, and that's where we talk about media control and ownership, agenda setting, and the rest of them. So you find out that the church, the Anglican church, can say, okay, these are the programs we want to see on air, and these programs will go. And then the second part is somebody can just wake up somewhere and decide to talk about the Anglican church and portray the Anglican church the way he or she wants to portray the Anglican church, or maybe the Church of Nigeria, without having a deep knowledge of what the Church of Nigeria stands for. So for that, you don't have control over.
Oh, and we have a whole lot of them on social media right now.
Perfect.
A whole lot.
Perfect. So you don't have control over. So I think for me, one of the steps forward will be to be very intentional in incorporating media in our theological training.
Okay.
Yes. So for instance, I do a lot of research, and I have the privilege to teach in one way or the other on the issue of religion and media and politics. So how do we understand this blend? How can we raise church leaders, church pastors to understand how they can use media, and to also understand how media is used to portray them? Because if you don't understand how media is used to portray the church, you might be carelessly dragged into what you are not prepared for.
Very true.
So the question is, in order to help the public image particularly within the Church of Nigeria, there should be an intentional theological effort when it comes to the reflection on how we raise pastor, when it has to do with the issue of media and how they reflect with the issue of media. And then the other thing for me also is that we must understand, or we should get to the point where we begin to really look at the fact to say, we don't allow how the world or how individuals want to change, or how individuals want to portray, how a particular church must behave, or the Church of Nigeria in terms of our ecclesiology, and other churches in terms of their ecclesiology. So we must maintain that orthodoxy. I mean, when you talk about it, what is it? It's about right belief. It's about scriptures. So the whole idea is we must constantly remind ourselves that whatever we do out there through, whether we use media or media, whatever we do out there through the media, we must never forget that we do it unto the glory of God and to the blessing of humanity.
That's really, I love that part. Whatever we do unto the glory of God and to the blessing of humanity. It's actually in the Bible, whatever
That's
you
right.
do. Unto the glory
That's
of God.
right.
Now you've talked so much about the Anglican Communion, using the media and all of that. So I just want you to compare the use of media between the Orthodox churches and these new generational churches. I really want you to, give us your own comparison between these two.
Okay, I think I cannot really speak with authority in that, and part of the reason is
It's
because
just your opinion.
yes,
I said your opinion.
So part of the reason is that I have not done a comparative research that brings a new generational church and maybe the Anglican church. Maybe there might be other scholars who have delved into that. I remember there is a very great, brilliant Roman Catholic scholar in the media called Walter Hejirika. He has done great work. I think he based somewhere in Port Harcourt. He has done great work looking at the Roman Catholic and maybe some other Pentecostal. But I think for me, one of the things that we should understand is that to compare between the mainline churches like the Anglican and maybe a Pentecostal churches, there are different comparisons that we can give. So for instance, number one, in my research, I tried to look at in Nigeria, when you talk about the media, there was a place where I said Pentecostal obsession with the media. as one of the topic in my work. So I asked the question that why do the Pentecostal churches use a lot of media? I tried to ask the question. And the Anglican, although we have been engaged in media right from the 18th century, as part of the first founding fathers of media through the print in Nigeria, to be precise, and things like that. But we can deeply account for media in terms of television in 2013.
Exactly.
So there are people who have been there before us. There are people who we can learn from. So, but when you look at the Pentecostal at the mainline churches, people will tell you different things. But I think in my own opinion, the first thing, if you take ACNN, for example, one of the things that ACNN might not allow is for me to sit here and begin to find a way to raise money, commercialization and commodification of religion through the media, to a certain extent. It happens, but it happens with a certain, we are very discreet in the way you do that. In my work, you will find a whole session on commercialization of religion, but in the new generational churches also, one of the little thing I discover, it's subjected to a lot of critique, and I'm happy to receive as many people that want to critique in that particular aspect, is the fact that most times you find out that the focus is on one person.
Oh, yes.
You find out that the focus is on one person, but why in places like the ACNN, people like us have the opportunity to come here. There are other people who, there are a lot of people who can come and, different voices and things like that. So we see that. But I think for me, above all, one of the most important things that we must put at the back of our mind is that we are not called to compete. We are called to complement one another.
True.
Wherever we think we are doing it right, we strengthen ourselves. Where we need to learn from others, we learn from them and things like that. So in terms of comparison, it might be a challenging thing for me to do. But I would really pick that as a challenge.
Oh, I was just about saying, I'm giving you a topic for a research. I was just about waiting for you to land. And I was like, okay, I'll give you a topic for research. And you just took it out of my mouth. So I hope I get to see that when it is done finally.
And maybe there are a lot of people out there who can do that as their master's or PhD thesis. That would be interesting to do a comparison between, pick one media outlet, maybe like you can pick the ACNN, pick a particular aspect of the ACNN, and then maybe you can go to Dove TV. I'm sure they will be gracious. You can look at other different television station, which is owned by other churches, and compare things for yourself. At the end of the day, the comparison is not to say, oh, this one is right, oh, that one is wrong, but it's just for us to learn from one another. I think for me, that will be an interesting thing.
Oh, that would be really interesting. I'm actually even thinking it was like,
maybe that should be your PhD or your master's degree.
I will think about that, but you're the researcher here, so I put it back to you. I'll give you back the hot potato. Well, you've really talked a whole lot, and I really appreciate your wealth of knowledge. Is really something we would always want to tap into the more. So I just want to ask, what recommendations or what advice do you have for religious media in Nigeria?
I think the first thing I will say is well done to every religious media outlet in Nigeria. Well done. Whatever you are doing, whatever, just well done. But the second thing that I will say is that it is not by mistake that God, in God's wisdom, put us in a multicultural and multi-religious country called Nigeria.
True.
It's not by mistake. So every religious media outlet should have that at the back of their mind. That religious media outlet should, whether it is, so my definition of religious media outlet, let me just say this, is any media outlet that is founded, is owned, and is sponsored, is functioned, whatever, by a religious individual or a religious institution. Okay. So I use that from this broader perspective to say, even if you have a Facebook page, as a religious person, you have an X account as a religious person, you have an Instagram, you have whatever kind of account, never forget that you are not having that account only for the propagation of your own religion. Never forget that. And the reason I'm saying this is very important because you must have a foundation of your religion. But remember that that account is also for the flourishing of God's creation. It's for the flourishing of human being. If my Facebook account will create religious conflict, why should I operate that?
Very good question.
Why should I operate that? If my preaching as a preacher, I come on air and I am insulting and castigating, not even having what we call religious literacy. Religious literacy is just simple respect for other people's belief system.
We have a big problem like that in
Yes,
Nigeria.
it's just
big problem.
It's not difficult. It's just simple. Respect other people's religion as they respect your religion.
Simple.
You are not in Nigeria by mistake. So religious media outlets, be deeply rooted in your religious belief, but in your religious belief, make room for humanity. Understand that there is if you live here and die, there's no religion in heaven, according to most of the sacred books that we've read.
Yeah.
We go back to God, our Creator. For us as Christians, it is through Jesus Christ.
Yes.
So why will I use my social media platform to be creating problems in the name of religion? So my first advice will be, is to the glory of God and is to the flourishing of humanity. Do not use your media platform to cause violence, to cause problem. Find a way, how can we flourish as a nation? A lot of our brothers and sisters have died. For how long are we continue to be? And in my research, there was a place where I had a part where I talked about I asked a question, is religious media used to promote violence in Nigeria or to cause violence in Nigeria? I asked that question in my work. And it was very interesting. I think in one of the first media researcher in Nigeria who did a thorough research on Pentecostalism, her name is Professor Rosalind Hackett. And Rosalind Hackett, she's an American lady, came to Nigeria, did a thorough research on Pentecostalism and media. I had the privilege of meeting her in different, she's very old now. And in one of the things that she said is that, I think around 1999, 1998 and things like that, she was saying that the religious media outlets in Nigeria, religious media, will get to a point when it will begin to define the social political context of Nigeria.
That was as far back as 1998.
Yes, I have it in my work. And she was saying that they will define the social political context, the direction it will go. And we have seen that.
Yeah.
You talk about the crises, many crises that has happened. For instance, if you look at the Miss World crisis that happened in 2003 in Kaduna, Nigeria, one of the things that you discover, you will find out that in one way or the other, there were some kind of things that came out through the media. And it went from one place to the other and, things like that. So for me, I think we must learn to live together. And the reason I like to speak like this is because I also did a study. I did a study on ecumenism. So I think for me, the most important thing is the flourishing of our people. For me, I cannot overemphasize that. People have died.
A whole lot.
And we cannot continue. The media is a blessing to us. We cannot continue to use media and continue to propagate hate and hate and hate and hate and hate and things like that. So that will be my advice. More people should open media outlets. More TV stations should be open. And I wish that I can see a partnership a partnership between different media outlets in terms of resources, in terms of manpower, in terms of training, a partnership among media, because we can't do media in isolation.
Not at all.
So I think for me, that will be my recommendation for a religious media outlet going forward. And don't be afraid to say the truth.
Not at all. Yeah, very true.
Don't be afraid to say the truth. The gospel of Jesus Christ is counterculture. Part of the reason we get what we do is going to be reflected in my book that I'm working on. Part of the reason we see what we do a lot in Nigeria is because we are scared to die.
Yeah. Well, you can say that we're scared to die, and probably nobody wants to go to prison. Nobody wants to lose his freedom.
But the gospel of Jesus Christ is counterculture. Okay, well, that's another conversation.
Exactly.
That's another conversation. Yes.
Okay, so let me take this question. I would want your response to be swift and brief. You talked about the trajectory of media and church ministry in the 21st century. I want to know, what advice do you have to give to clergymen, your fellow clergymen, with regards
I think my advice for my brothers is to first and foremost say, well done. In the midst of all that is happening, you still remain true to the gospel. We salute your courage. And then the second thing will be to say, to be an effective and a faithful minister of the gospel. Our forefathers will say, you must have the Bible in one hand and you must have the newspaper in the other hand. So in other words, you need to be deeply informed about what is happening in your context.
Okay.
And most of what we hear about what is happening in our context firsthand quickly is through the media. Strategic use of the media. Let it not be that the only time you want to come to media is to come and preach and say this. No. Find out what is happening in your context. Put what is happening in your context in historical perspective. And it takes hard work.
Yes, it does.
So my advice will be, try as you use the media, do not be carried away by what is there. Do not be carried away. Be very discreet in terms of what you put out there and what you consume. Not only guide your own life in terms of media, see how can you also engage. And that is why I like the Church of Nigeria. I like this church that I belong to. And part of the reason I'm saying this, I just digress a little bit, but let me say this to you. Do you know that the ACNN, part of its establishment, the discussion for the establishment was in what is called Vision 2010 for a very long time. I have it here. But this is the most important point for me. The Church of Nigeria was very, very instrumental when there was a very serious decay happening within the Nigerian banking sector. I'm saying this to answer your question on how the church is paying attention to what is happening in the society.
We're definitely going to come to that. I just wanted your advice to your fellow clergymen on trajectory of media.
Pay attention to what is happening and invest. Don't be afraid to lead your council members to invest in media. Don't be afraid to do that. Speak to them. Don't be afraid to do that. And don't do it with greed. Do it with a clean heart. And part of the reason you reach more people through the media than the people who sit in your congregation on a Sunday.
Very true.
So do not be afraid, but also be very, very informed about what you put out there.
I agree.
Be very informed.
I agree.
Because if as a priest, I stand on a Sunday, I'm from the Church of Nigeria, and whatever I say is not only being listened by people in Nigeria, it's listened by people out there. So it is important that we are informed, even in our biblical exegesis. We are very, very intentional, prayerfully on what we put out there, not come carelessly and want to put anything out there. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Well, his fellow clergymen, you heard him. Do not be afraid to take risks. Well, I think if you don't take risks, the risk will come to you somehow. Oh, we truly appreciate you for this wonderful segment. We truly, truly appreciate all you've said. Viewers, you need to sit up and wait for the part 2 of this. It's going to be really awesome. Where we have to call it a wrap on today's captivating episode of The Exclusive. We hope you enjoyed this intimate conversation with our remarkable guests, Reverend Dr. Ishaya Anthony. So until we come your way again with the part 2 of this episode next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and remember that everyone has a story worth telling. I am still promising Joe Kwadibe, and bye for now.
Theology, also simply put, is like study God. So, if God creates the whole universe, so theology must be concerned about the whole universe, because God is, the whole universe belongs to God. In the province of Nigeria, we have medical doctors that are priests.
Yes, yes.
And these medical doctors will not only speak to you from medical sciences, their theological experience have something to contribute to their work as medical doctors.